everyone, and welcome to Truth Over News. Last week, we reported on the confidential human source for the FBI who was arrested for allegedly making false statements about Ukrainian energy company Burisma and Joe and Hunter Biden. The source, a man called Alexander Smirnov, had told the FBI in 2020 that he had heard from Burisma that Joe and Hunter Biden got bribes in exchange for the Bidens getting Ukraine's chief prosecutor fired. As crazy as that story was, chiefly owing to the fact that there was little or no evidence that Smirnov lied, it just got a lot crazier. After a federal judge routinely bailed Smirnov last week, Biden's DOJ moved heaven and earth to get him back into jail. To do so, they accused Smirnov, without any evidence whatsoever, of acting on behalf of Russia in trying to swing the 2024 election to Trump. As you may have seen from hysterical media reports, Russiagate 2.0 has officially kicked off. Russiagate 1.0 was the false narrative that Putin colluded with Trump to swing the 2016 election. Russiagate 2.0 is the false narrative that Putin secretly used an FBI source to swing the 2024 election to Trump. If that sounds too crazy to be true, that's because it's not true. But it's the new narrative that has been seeded by Biden's DOJ, and unless Alexander Smirnov is able to fight back, it's the narrative that we'll be stuck with. So what happened, and how did we go from a feeble story about a totally unknown FBI source to Russiagate 2.0 in the space of a few days? As we reported last week, an FBI informant, Alexander Smirnov, was arrested on Valentine's Day for allegedly lying to the FBI about the fact that Joe and Hunter Biden got bribed by Ukrainian energy company Burisma. Note that that story did not involve Russia. It was a simple narrative about an overeager FBI source who supposedly told a false story about the Bidens and Ukraine. And as we showed on last week's show, the narrative wasn't even supported by the facts. Special counsel David Wise accused Smirnov of falsely claiming that the Bidens had received a bribe from Burisma. But what actually happened, even if we stick to Wise's evidence, is that Smirnov was told about the bribe and merely passed on that information. It wasn't Smirnov who was making the accusation. Smirnov was just the person who was passing it on. In fact, we can now also reveal that the original FBI report on Smirnov's information explicitly notes that Smirnov is not able to provide any further opinion as to the veracity of Zlochevsky's aforementioned statements. So Smirnov was literally just passing along information from Burisma's owner, Zlochevsky, and even said that he didn't know whether it was true. Then why was he charged with lying? As we discussed on last week's show, the fact that he was charged is very strange in itself, precisely because it is not knowable what Burisma told Smirnov in private. Special counsel David Wise claims that he knows that Smirnov lied about those private conversations because the timing does not match up. Wise claims that while Smirnov supposedly met the Burisma officials who told him about the Biden bribe story in late 2015 or 2016, he actually only met them for the first time in March 2017. So that's Wise's explanation as to why Smirnov must have lied. But this explanation was already pretty threadbare, and now it seems to have completely fallen apart. And this has to do with the fact of how Wise purports to know about the timing of Smirnov's meetings with Burisma. According to Wise, Smirnov told his FBI handler that he met with Burisma official 1 or 2 months later in Vienna, Austria, around the time that public official 1, which is Joe Biden, made a public statement about the then Ukrainian prosecutor general being corrupt and that he should be fired, removed from office. Now, Wise took the event described by Smirnov, meaning Joe Biden's public statement about firing the Ukrainian prosecutor, and assumed that Smirnov must have meant a speech that Joe Biden gave in the Ukrainian parliament on December 9th, 2015. From there, Wise worked out his dates. While it is correct that that was the first time that Biden publicly intimated that he wanted changes at the prosecutor's office, something we discussed on a recent episode of Truth Over News, what Joe Biden demanded in 2015 was not that explicit. Biden said it was not enough to set up a new anti-corruption bureau and establish a special prosecutor fighting corruption, but that rather the office of the general prosecutor desperately needs reform. That's not the same as what Smirnov actually told his FBI handler, which is that Biden said that the Ukrainian prosecutor general was corrupt and that he should be fired. But there is, of course, another instance where Joe Biden did actually say that the Ukrainian prosecutor was corrupt and that he needed to be fired. And that was the infamous January 23, 2018 talk which Biden gave at the Council of Foreign Relations. Here's a clip from that talk.
Well, son of a bitch. Got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid.
So right now, you're probably thinking what we're thinking. What if Smirnov was not referencing Biden's speech in December of 2015 in Ukraine, a speech which hardly anyone had ever heard of? And what if instead he was referencing Biden's January 2018 talk that everyone has heard about? And once you start thinking along those lines, everything falls into place. All of a sudden, the timing works because Smirnov did in fact meet with Burisma officials around the time of Biden's 2018 talk. So with that in mind, it is possible that Special Counsel David Wise screwed up his dates and that Smirnov did not lie at all. And remember, this is just about the timing of Smirnov's meetings with Burisma. This is not even about what Burisma told Smirnov, which is something that, in any case, Wise cannot prove one way or the other. So those are extremely significant developments which only further undermine the case against Smirnov, which was very weak to begin with. But if you thought that might have made Wise and the DOJ back off a bit, the exact opposite happened. They doubled down, and this gets us to Russiagate 2.0. You probably saw all the headlines these past few days that somehow the Smirnov case was proof that Russia was swinging the 2024 election to Trump. NBC's Andrea Mitchell and Ken Delaney, notorious disinformation peddlers who previously helped promote the false Trump-Russia collusion narrative, well, they've taken it even further. They're now claiming that because of Smirnov, everything can be blamed on Russia. Yes, everything. Trump-Russia collusion was true all along. Hunter Biden's laptop was a Russian plot after all. And now Russia is doing it all again to help Trump win the next election. 2016, 2020, and 2024. All Russian election interference years. But of course, nothing could be further from the truth. None of those things have anything to do with Smirnov. Nothing in the Smirnov indictment even remotely suggests that whatever he said about the Bidens had anything to do with Russia. So where did this new narrative come from? Well, it came from Hunter Biden's special counsel, David Weiss. Late last week, just as Smirnov was about to be released on bail, which is a completely routine and normal process in these kinds of minor cases, remember, he was charged with lying to the FBI, which, even if true, will result in something like a 2-week sentence. So just as he was about to be released, Wise issued a new filing in which he told the judge that Smirnov needed to be kept in jail because of Russia. The term Russian intelligence features exactly 0 times in Smirnov's actual indictment. But all of a sudden, Wise magically pulled the Russia rabbit out of his hat and accused Smirnov of vast contacts with Russian intelligence. Which makes you wonder, if that was such a huge problem, why didn't Wise mention it earlier, like when he charged the guy? In fact, it was never a problem. It was the FBI who sent Smirnov around the world to talk to foreign intelligence. It was literally his job. Yet now it's being painted as something nefarious. But it gets even worse. In one sentence, Wise now claims that during his custodial interview on February 14th, Smirnov admitted that officials associated with Russian intelligence were involved in passing a story about business person 1, which is Hunter Biden. Smirnov denies this, but even if it was true, it means absolutely nothing. Wise does not say what the story was which Smirnov was supposedly told. It could have been about Hunter's weekend plans or his drug habits. Wise doesn't even say that the story isn't true. Wise also doesn't say that the story came from Russian intelligence, but rather someone associated with Russian intelligence, which again could mean anything. It could have been someone's grandma for all we know. And yet the media had a total meltdown over this one sentence. Here's how CNN reported it. Smirnov told investigators he got Hunter Biden dirt from Russian intelligence officials. No, he did not. He said no such thing. But it gets even worse. Wise now also accuses Smirnov of spreading misinformation about Biden, and that the misinformation he is spreading is not confined to 2020. He is actively peddling new lies that could impact US elections after meeting with Russian intelligence officials in November. Again, none of this was at issue when Wise charged Smirnov on Valentine's Day. The indictment is about Smirnov and Burisma, nothing to do with Russia or the 2024 election. Plus, Smirnov wasn't peddling anything. He's an online ghost. No one had ever heard of this guy. He wasn't talking to anyone other than his FBI handler. And so, just like with Russiagate 1.0, a combination of government lies and media lies has now created this new perfect storm where everything is Russia's fault. We don't like using the term op on this show, as not everything is an op, and the word is overused anyway, but the Smirnov case does appear to be one of the more transparent instances of an op. They literally pulled some guy out of the hat and pinned Russiagate 2.0 on this guy, thereby not only creating a false narrative for the 2024 election, but also deflecting from the recent Her report, which found that Biden was too senile to stand trial, and derailing the Republican-led impeachment inquiry into Biden. That inquiry is not based on what Smirnov said, which can, in any case, not be proven. But already Democrats are claiming that the entire impeachment effort is somehow built around Smirnov and that it's all based on Russian disinformation. So what about Smirnov? What happened to him? Well, the first judge did not buy into the DOJ's ridiculous Russia collusion claims, and he released Smirnov. But then, outrageously, DOJ secretly went to another judge and had Smirnov rearrested in his lawyer's office on the same charges on which he'd already been bailed. Even worse, DOJ told the new judge, Otis Wright, that they needed to rearrest Smirnov because Smirnov's lawyer, famed Las Vegas defense attorney David Chesnoff, was plotting Smirnov's escape, presumably to Russia. We don't know any more of what DOJ told Judge Wright, but it must have been some really bad stuff because Wright agreed not only to have Smirnov rearrested, but he also wrote in his order that Chesnoff, the Las Vegas lawyer, was helping his client flee the country. That's completely out of order. A judge can't say that kind of stuff without at least having heard the other side, which he never did. And yet, here we are. Smirnov is back in jail, where he's now already spent more time than he would have faced even if he'd been found guilty on the minor charges that were actually brought. So why is all this happening? Why is DOJ completely unhinged when it comes to keeping Smirnov locked up? Why, if DOJ now says that he's an evil Russian spy, did they not charge him with anything serious, like espionage? None of this makes any sense. All we know for sure is that Biden's DOJ is determined to keep Smirnov locked up and quiet at any cost. Perhaps it's that Smirnov knows too much. After all, he did meet Burisma's top officials many times. Or perhaps he's just a convenient scapegoat for starting Russiagate 2.0, like a new fake Steele dossier. Thanks for joining us in today's episode of Truth Over News.